Morning everyone. Today we'll take a look at the second part of the discussion for the essay paper of the mains 2023. In the first video, in the first discussion, we looked at section A. Today we'll take a look at the 4 topics of section B. But before I begin with the section, let me first briefly one more time revise the elements of a good essay. For any student to be able to write an essay that fetches you marks, number 1, you must ensure an appropriate interpretation, a comprehensive, correct interpretation of the topic. In your interpretation, you must focus on the key terms, the key elements of the essay. Simultaneously, any understanding, any interpretation that you're giving should be something that can be considered universally acceptable. If a majority of the people agree with your interpretation, we will say that the interpretation is correct. Therefore, in interpreting the topic, do not be radical, do not try to be different, don't try to be controversial. Give as acceptable an understanding as possible. Number 2, in an essay, to be able to write well, number 2, you must maintain fidelity to the topic. What do you mean by fidelity to the topic? That as far as possible, you must focus on the topic. In every paragraph, no matter what you're writing about, you must address the topic repeatedly. As much as is possible, reinforce the topic. The better your reinforcement, the easier and the more interesting your essay becomes to read. Third, when you're writing different paragraphs, maintain diversity in your thoughts, in your perspectives. Don't repeat the same thoughts over and over again. Don't talk about similar things. You could, for example, what is diversity? You could be talking about journalism. You could be talking about healthcare, education, poverty, gender-related issues, transgenders in India, international relations, security, defense, n number of topics. Maintain diversity. Look at the same topic from multiple dimensions, multiple perspectives. Fourth, in an essay, you express your thoughts, you express your opinion, but your thoughts and your opinions are very difficult to understand, are very difficult to agree with, unless and until you are able to substantiate those thoughts. And to substantiate those thoughts, add examples, add evidence, data, quotations, facts, and so on. These will validate your point of view, and the better your point is substantiated, more acceptable your essay will become. Fifth and finally, no matter how the topic is given to you, you should be optimistic. You should be positive. And wherever it is possible, give suggestions. What do you mean by prescriptive? That you should give suggestions and recommendations how any prevalent problems can be addressed, can be tackled. 5 elements that a student can keep in mind for writing a good essay. Now, keeping this in mind, let me move to the first topic of section B, this one over here. Girls are weighed down by restrictions, boys with demands. 2 equally harmful disciplines. Now, before I look at the interpretation of the topic, to be honest with you, this topic, if I had to use one word to describe it, I would say in the 21st century, this is a slightly regressive, not even slightly, I would say significantly regressive statement to make. In 2023, when women have started proving themselves in almost every field, every walk of life, it is not right to say, it's not appropriate to say that girls are weighed down by restrictions, that the demands are only made from boys. To take a small example, let's say somewhere in India at the moment, there is a single mother. This single mother, if you look at it, has absolutely no restrictions. She is mobile, she is economically independent, there are no restrictions placed by anyone around her. And yet from the single mother, there are dozens of demands. She has to take care of her work, otherwise she will lose her financial security. She has to take care of her child. She has to take care of domestic responsibilities. Everything will fall upon her. So in this case, in the case of a single mother, working mother in India, are there any restrictions? Actually not. Are there any demands made from her? Multiple. Demands are not made only from boys. Similarly, can we say that boys have demands but no restrictions? The answer is no. The male gender in our country, in a patriarchal society, is not allowed to emote, is not expected to emote rather. The Prime Minister of India, on a few occasions in the last 9 years, in public settings, has become a little emotional when sharing something personal. Most famously, he was sitting, I think, in California with Mark Zuckerberg, and in the course of the discussion, he remembered his mother. And when he was talking about his mother and the hardships she had faced, he became a little emotional, almost broke down. Now, it's very natural for any human being to remember and to cherish the sacrifices that their parents have made. But when he became emotional, a lot of people pointed fingers even there. They said that being the Prime Minister, being a man, this was something that was not expected of him. But that again is wrong. Which is why I'm saying this, in today's day and age, that's not a very nice topic to give. Even if a student says that, sir, I will disagree with the topic or partially agree, these are the kind of statements that should be kept away from public discourse. They should not be entertained, they should not be encouraged, because a lot of people might actually think that the topic is actually correct. Any which way. For us, we'll move on to the work. What is the interpretation of this topic? So first question that we ask ourselves is, what do you mean by restrictions or what do you mean by demands? What are restrictions? The prohibitions that are imposed upon you, the constraints that are imposed upon you, or very simply, the sacrifices that you're expected to make. Simultaneously, and this is not only for girls, this is also for boys. What do you understand by demands, expectations, benchmarks, and the standards that your family or that your society, that your environment sets for you? And demands are not made only of boys. There are many demands that are made from girls. Now, since these restrictions and demands are gender neutral, they are not restricted to one particular gender. Therefore, to understand the topic better, there are two more questions, identical questions, where we only create a difference in the last word. What are the restrictions and demands upon girls, and what are the restrictions and demands upon boys? For girls, what are the restrictions? Most commonly in our country, in our society, restrictions upon their mobility. Where are you going? Why are you going? Who are you going with? Is it necessary to go there? What are these restrictions, constraints? Similarly, there are restrictions as far as their occupation is concerned. Even today, it is very uncommon, you can't say it is impossible, but very uncommon to find a woman in the armed forces. India has never had a female Chief Justice of India. India has never had a female head of law. What are these? These are restrictions upon your occupation, upon your education. Very often girls are not able to complete their formal schooling. Restrictions upon your finances or your financial independence, and so on. Simultaneously, it's not that girls have only restrictions. There are multiple demands that are made on women. Most commonly are domestic duties, which includes childcare, which includes unpaid household work. And this very often takes the form of personal sacrifices. If a sacrifice has to be made for the sake of the family, very often women will be asked to make the sacrifice. What do they have to sacrifice? They have to sacrifice their work. They have to sacrifice their financial independence. They have to sacrifice their personal wishes or their small aspirations for the larger goal, which usually becomes a family. So demands are not only upon boys, they are also upon girls. Similarly, but it's not that it is only based upon the gender, it is also related to boys. For boys, what are the restrictions? As I was saying earlier, very often that they are not allowed to emote. Boys are not expected to express their emotions. Similarly, there are gender stereotypes, that there are certain things that men should not do. There are certain professions that men should not, or males should not enter. And there are demands also from them, most commonly in our society. Number one, excel in your given profession, or number two, ensure material success. The worth of a man very often is not determined by what kind of a person he is, what nature, what character, what personality he has, but largely by his financial success, by his material acquisitions. Now, since this topic does not apply to one gender, since it applies equally to both, when you are writing this topic down, look at different dimensions, look at different perspectives, and when you are looking at these dimensions and perspectives, the restrictions and demands that are made, ensure that you correlate them with the male as well as with the female gender. For example, when it comes to education, very often women, what is the restriction or demand? That they have to sacrifice their education. For what? Usually for unpaid care work. A girl who's studying in class 6th or class 7th might not be able to attend school for the simple reason that the parents go out to work and there's an elderly grandparent or a small child in the house, a younger sibling who needs to be taken care of. If it is an agrarian family, when the parents go out into the fields, it is the girl who's supposed to sacrifice her education and stay back to take care of domestic responsibilities. Simultaneously, this is not only for girls. What is the demand or the restriction upon boys? That their education will be considered worth very little, unless and until it translates into financial success, unless and until it translates into earning potential. As a result, what example can we give over here? that unpaid care work, the value of global unpaid care work is estimated by some agencies at a total of $10.8 trillion. And this, by the way, is 3 times the size of the global tech industry. If it was quantified, I'm fairly confident that the sacrifices that girls would have to make would not be so acute anymore. Another dimension that we can look at over here is housing. In housing, what is the restriction or the demand upon women? That very often they are denied ownership. This not only leads to a lack of assets, this also affects them as far as their stature or their status within a family is concerned. For boys, what is the restriction or what is the demand? That they are expected to provide the finances. And here, what example can you give? The Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. The Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana makes it easier to give women better status by saying that if the ownership of a house is registered in the name of the woman, there are certain benefits that you will get. For example, a relaxation in the stamp duties. Similarly, if a woman is registered as the owner, now there will be preferential interest rates that will be given for any housing loan that is taken. Third, we can look at the same issue from the perspective of health. When it comes to healthcare, what is the restriction or the demand for women? That they are denied priority in accessing healthcare. And for the man or for the boy, the problem is that they are expected to provide for the family. When the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana was launched, initially there was a restriction that from every household, only 5 household members could be made beneficiaries. But very soon the government realized that all 5 people who were being registered for the scheme or under the scheme were only males. A 12-year-old boy had a greater probability of being registered as a beneficiary compared to his 70-year-old grandmother. Why? Because women are not given the priority, and the responsibility for arranging this lies upon the man. Both have restrictions and demands. If we take a look at the field of employment, for girls, what is the restriction or what is the constraint that they face? A lack of pay parity. Very frequently, there is pay disparity between the genders. And as far as the boy is concerned, he is supposed to work. He has to work to become the breadwinner. It's very rare to find a man who's a homemaker in a family. And here, what example can you give? An Oxfam report which says that the gap between the male and the female gender in terms of pay parity is so wide, is so large, that it could take up to 170 years to be able to equalize, to be able to bridge the gap. And finally, where both of them are affected with the same domain is their status. For a woman, for a girl, her status in a family is largely dependent on her ability to be able to deliver a male child. And for the man, he also has to deliver a male child almost to prove his masculinity. The expectation that we have from men, their traditional roles. And this, most surprisingly, I would say shockingly also, is witnessed in the Goa polygamy law. The Goa polygamy law allows a Hindu man to marry again if his wife fails to deliver a child by the age of 25 or a male child by the age of 30. It seems almost impossible to believe that such laws could exist. But since they exist, what do they imply? That these restrictions as well as these demands are not only upon one gender, they are equally harmful. 2 equally harmful disciplines, they're equally harmful for both the genders simultaneously. I won't say this is a difficult topic to write on, but I would say again that the choice of the topic could have been a little better. This was not a very good statement to make in today's day and age. Second topic from section B is this one: mathematics is the music of reason. Now, and what I was saying in the first discussion also, many students have this misconception, I would say that the misconception is forced upon them that there are certain options that are beneficial for the essay paper. I think after today, we have discussed 8 topics over here. I don't think I've named one philosopher. I don't think I've named one thinker. I don't think I've talked about one school of thought over here. And yet the essays are taking shape very, very comfortably with a lot of diversity. From today, I think the one option that a person could say, if someone asks me today, so which option should I take? I think the only exception here would be the field of maths. I'll probably tell you, whatever your background, please choose maths if you want an overlap with your essay paper. The only topic that was related to a particular option subject. Now, in maths is the music of reason. So first thing that you do is interpret the topic correctly by asking yourself, what is music and what is reason? What is music? Music, very simply, is the orderly arrangement of sounds, of instruments, of notes. Without the arrangement, that sound is only a noise. I can sing a song which maybe even you can sing, but you might be an exceptionally good singer, and what I am singing, the same words, trying to sing in the same tone or the same voice, could come out as absolutely unacceptable, unbearable noise. Why? Because the notes, the sounds, the instruments have to be arranged in a particular manner. So the key understanding from here for a student would be this word over here, arrangement. On the other hand, what do you mean by reason? Logic, rationality, wisdom, intelligence, and so on. Unless and until this logic is arranged in a particular manner, very frequently you will not be able to achieve the intended or the desired objective. And very often in human existence, in almost every walk of life, it is maths that enables us to ensure this arrangement. But we'll look at that arrangement in a minute or so. Second, how is maths related to reason? Because it is mathematics that develops for us the analytical skills that are needed to arrange our thoughts, that are needed to arrange our observations, our hypothesis, any evidence that we have in a systemized, arranged, and orderly manner. Unless and until you are able to arrange your thoughts in an orderly manner, high probability that you will not be able to move to the next step. And third, finally, where is this music used, or where is this music, this arrangement found? In almost every human endeavor. Whether it is space research, whether it is climate change, whether it is agriculture, whether it is education, health, in almost every walk of life, you need this arrangement of your observations, your thoughts, your intelligence, your evidence, without which you might not be able to progress. And this arrangement, this music, is enabled by, again, the field of maths. Now, I can't say again that this is a difficult topic, but in this topic, a slight challenge over here is that you'll have to look at it from multiple perspectives. And if you have different perspectives, your essay will take shape very comfortably and very easily. For example, what is the reason or what is the logic that we want to study the universe? What is the music or the arrangement over here? Is that you ensure, how do we study the universe? By ensuring equal gravitational pull. How does that relate? Because if you look at the James Webb Space Telescope right now, it has to be positioned at a Lagrange point. What is a Lagrange point? A point where the gravitational pull of two bodies, for example, for the James Webb Space Telescope, the pull of a body like Earth and the Sun, Earth and Jupiter, any large bodies, the gravitational pull is such that it does not get pulled into either of the two directions, and as these bodies keep moving, that object or that satellite or that telescope can keep moving along with them. What was our reason? We wanted to study the universe. For studying the universe, what do we have? The James Webb Space Telescope. How is maths the music of reason? Because it is mathematical calculations that allow us, that permit us to arrange that logic in a manner where it can actually help us in achieving the objective. If it was not for maths, we would never be able to identify the Lagrange point. And if you're not able to identify that, this telescope will crash into one object or the other. Similarly, when it comes to climate change, what do we want? We want that whenever we are making something, whenever we are constructing a dam, we are making a housing project, any project that we're looking at, you must be able to evaluate the environmental consequences. Now, what is the arrangement over here? Predictive models. That before I start the construction, before I cut down trees to, let's say, make a new metro line, for example, RA Forest in Bombay, I must be able to understand what likely ecological cost this will lead to. For this, what do we need? Predictive models. Who enables those predictive models? Maths. And this very simply takes the form of environmental impact assessments. If you look at very recently, the world witnessed the COVID pandemic. In the COVID pandemic, what is the reason? What is the logic? We want to check the spread of the disease. We want to check the impact of vaccinations. For this, what do we need? We need to arrange the evidence around us in a manner that we can predict the outbreak. After we start giving vaccinations, we want to predict and we want to assess the impact of the vaccinations. Is it actually leading to decline in the incidence of the virus, in the incidence of the disease? And for this, what do we have? For this, we have very simply disease modeling. And who enables us to do that? Again, mathematics, without which any such prediction, any such models would not be possible. If you look at the issue of social justice in the country, here, what is the logic? We want to promote inclusive growth. But to promote inclusive growth, you cannot focus only on your GDP. You will also have to look at income inequality in your country. But income inequality cannot be expressed by simply saying that the rich are becoming richer and the poor are becoming poorer. You must be able to quantify, in numbers, quantify this income inequality. And what form does this take? This takes what you people learn in economics also, the Lorenz curve, the Gini coefficient. A mathematical model that helps you understand what is the degree of disparity and whether the disparity is increasing or receding over a period of time. And that again is not possible without maths. That arrangement is not possible unless and until you have the subject. And finally, one more is the issue of climate action or climate change. For this part, I think has got cut off. This is climate resilient agriculture. That is what we want. That no matter what the impact of climate change, we must be able to address it. We must be able to adapt according to it. For this, what arrangement do we need? We need climate modeling. And what form does this take? This form takes the form of general circulation models, where we assess weather patterns, we assess precipitation patterns over a period of time, adapt in a manner so that we can best deal with any such changes. And again, who enables this? That again is the field of maths. That's your second topic. In the exam, I personally would not advise that a student tries to attempt this topic. Nonetheless, if you wanted to attempt it, as long as you had the right content, I think the essay was not difficult to write. And for those of you who are part of the classes over here, please note, we are not taking any example that is not given in the handouts. That is why I'm saying, read the handouts carefully, study them well. What I keep saying, don't read, study them well. And any essay topic that is given, you should be able to deal with it adequately and comfortably. Third topic that was given in section B was, I think, fairly simple, fairly straightforward. A society that has more justice is a society that needs less charity. So first question over here, what does justice signify? Now, I always tell the students that as far as possible, try not to increase your work, try to simplify it on standardized lines. So a lot of what is written over here, I have not written it myself. I have just borrowed from the preamble. So if you ask me what is justice, I would say this is equality of status and opportunity. Justice can be social, economic and political in the same sequence as given in the preamble. Second, what does charity signify? Charity is not that I am giving you alms, that I am giving you donations. Address it or understand it in a slightly better manner. So what is charity? That is your kindness. That is your compassion. Any aid or resistance that you're giving. And a slightly formal word, slightly technical word, affirmative action. Third, why is charity needed in a society that lacks justice? Where you don't have justice, there will be sections of your society that are weak, that are marginalized, that are discriminated against, or that are deprived. To ensure that these sections get to exercise their basic rights, get to preserve their dignity, and get to secure their existence and future, you will need charity, you will need assistance, you will need affirmative action. Understanding of this topic, I think, should be fairly simple. But when you're writing the answer down, when you're writing your essay, now what do you need? Again, diversity in your essay, so multiple perspectives. Now, what kind of justice do we need? We need economic justice, we need social justice, we need political justice, we need justice in education, we need justice in healthcare, and the list will go on. But for now, let's just look at 5. When we talk about economic justice, what is the affirmative action that we need? We need concessional interest rates. And again, here I can give you the example of the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. When we give preference to those households where a woman is registered as an owner, when we give preferential interest rates where a woman is registered as one of the borrowers, now what are we doing? We are promoting economic justice. Women now can also become household owners, can become house owners. Second, where do we need justice? Social justice. For social justice, what is the affirmative action? That you must abolish draconian systems, outdated systems, regressive, cruel systems. And here the example I'll give you is the abolition of slavery in the US. Third, we need political justice. Easy example over here. 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment. What are we trying? What is the affirmative action? Facilitate women's representation. Two more fields that we add. First is the field of education. In education, what do we need? We need affirmative action, especially for socio-economically disadvantaged groups. And here we must ensure their access to education. For this, the new education policy creates or establishes special education zones. What are we doing here? We are ensuring that where there is a lack of justice, there we are extending affirmative action. And fifth, finally, the issue of healthcare. In healthcare, what is the problem? That very frequently we do not have adequate resources. Where we don't have adequate resources, there you will need more charity. How do you need more charity? We will need donations, actual donations to ramp up, for example, our COVID response. And this takes the form of the PM CARES Fund that was established in the early days of the COVID pandemic, with the specific intention that as far as possible, people must be charitable, people must contribute, people must be kind, must extend assistance. Because only then can we ensure health justice or medical justice to many sections who might be deprived of this healthcare, especially people who do not have the ability to pay the private sector. So again, not a difficult topic. Only a point again I will tell you over here. Please ensure that you're looking at it from different perspectives. You repeat the same point again and again. High probability that your essay will look very repetitive, very substandard. Fourth and the final topic that was given was this one, simple topic. In fact, from the many students, I think about 14-15 students have sent me emails or I've spoken to them. From section B, this was the most common topic that students wrote about. Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. Simple topic, and yes, a good choice to make, because in the essay, always try to be safe. In the actual exam, try to be safe. Now, three questions again we frame here. Number one, what do we learn in school? We learn basic numeracy. We learn basic literacy. And we are supposed to learn manners and etiquette. Unfortunately, the focus of most of our learning in school is this numeracy, literacy, general knowledge, information. Adequate attention does not seem to be paid to the last elements, which is manners, which is etiquette, which is character and personality. Second, now this is what we learn. On the other hand, what is education? Education is this knowledge, is this intelligence that you're gathering, plus the character to be able to use it beneficially. The true purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows. What do you mean by mirrors into windows? That education enables you to not only look at yourself, but also be able to look at the world outside, explore it, understand it, and be able to contribute to it in a meaningful manner. Third, and the most important question here, how is education much more than what is taught in school? Because it enables to use our skills and knowledge correctly, not to do harm. Just because in class I ask you people very frequently, are you people well educated? And students, sometimes for some reasons, they are a little hesitant. But when I ask them, are you people well qualified? With conviction, they say yes. Because in any class, you'll find doctors, engineers, architects, chartered accountants, all these people sitting there. That's called a qualification. On the other hand, what is an education? Education is the ability to be able to use that skill, that knowledge in a manner that is beneficial for others also, not only for you. How is something beneficial only for you? When you use that information that you got to impose harm upon others and benefiting only yourself. And this was the topic, in fact, that the UPSC had asked a few years back, that education without morals seems to make man a clever devil. You have a lot of intelligence, lot of information, but you're not using it in the right manner. So that is your understanding over here. And now when you have to write your essay, 5 different perspectives again we choose. In each of them, differentiate between what was the learning and what was the needed education. And from there then, substantiate with a small example. For instance, if I take a look at what is the learning, scientific knowledge. But using the scientific knowledge that you have, a person, let's say, decides to make explosives. But when you're making explosives, it is your education that will help you understand whether these explosives will be used for a positive or for a negative outcome. With these explosives, will you use them for construction or will you use them for destruction? And where is the difference in this education visible? That is visible in the case of Alfred Nobel and Robert Oppenheimer. In the case of Nobel, he invents dynamite, but his intention is to use dynamite to blow up mountains, to make roads, to ensure better connectivity. Now, that is what remains with you after you've forgotten what you learnt in school. On the other hand is Robert Oppenheimer. In Oppenheimer's case, when he develops the atomic bomb, there is very little doubt that it will be used for destructive purposes and destruction on a mass scale. Why? Because education is what remains with you after you forget what you learnt in school. If you look at journalism, in journalism, what is the learning? Your basic journalistic information, your journalistic knowledge. What does education enable you to do? To report with or without sensitivity. That depends upon whether or not you remember that education long after you forget what you learnt in school. And here are two examples that you can write: Webb Miller and Kevin Carter. Who's Webb Miller? Webb Miller was the American journalist who was present in India at the Darsana Satyagraha when the Britishers were beating up the Indians mercilessly. Without any fear of the British Empire, Webb Miller reported fearlessly on what happened in Darsana. He reported to the global community how the Britishers beat up the Indians mercilessly, but the Indians with conviction withstood that beating, did not turn violent themselves. And this one single report turned world opinion against the British Empire in favor of the Indian independence movement. Now that is called an education long after you've forgotten what you learnt in school. On the other hand is Kevin Carter. Kevin Carter was a journalist who became very famous for a photograph that appeared on the front cover of the National Geographic magazine. I'm sure many of you would have seen this photograph. The photograph, I can't draw, so I will not even try. The photograph showed this small child, an African child, sitting on the bare earth, and there's a vulture behind him. The child is so weak, is so malnourished, that his bones are literally jutting out of his skin. And the vulture over there, you can see, is just waiting for this child to collapse or for the child to die so that he can attack the child and he can feast on him. Kevin Carter, as the photographer, sits for hours, and by his own admission later, he was waiting to see what would happen. He was not hoping for anything, but he was waiting to see what would happen. As it turned out, after some time, the child sort of crawled away from there. The vulture also got tired of waiting and the vulture flew away. But if Carter wanted, he could have just picked up a stone and scared the vulture away. He could have picked up the child and taken care of him, protected him. Carter chose not to do that. And that is what we say is reporting without sensitivity. And when you read about it, it's not that he was a bad person. For some reason, he did this that day. A year later, Kevin Carter committed suicide because he could not deal, he could not bear the suffering and the miseries he had seen in Africa. Another dimension that you can use, what learning can a person have? Let's say you're learning about medical science. Education, on the other hand, will decide whether you choose to use this learning to serve people or to exploit people. If you say serving people, here I will give you the example of Doctors Without Borders. Highly qualified professionals in their respective fields who travel across the world giving medical assistance to those people who need it the most, absolutely free of cost. On the other hand, when you choose to exploit, this takes the form of the person who's called the kidney kingpin of India, Dr. Amit Kumar, who made it a habit of exploiting the poor for the purpose of the rich. He would get in touch with rich clients who needed kidney transplants, would fly them into India, would keep them in very good hospitals. He would search for poor people, especially who had a terrible financial burden. He would promise them huge amounts of money, which were negligible compared to the amount he was earning. But he would give them that money in exchange for one of their kidneys, with very little concern for what happened to the donor after that. Why? Because education determines what you remember long after you forget what you learned in school. Another field that we can look at over here is formal training. For example, the training that a nun, a priest or a missionary goes through. But after that training is completed, it is your education that will decide to what extent you are empathetic and compassionate towards others. And the I think the most appropriate example here is Mother Teresa. She moves to India at the age of 19, works as a nun, works as a teacher in different schools across the country. One day, for some reason, when she is traveling to Darjeeling, I think she'd gone. When she was traveling from Calcutta to Darjeeling, she realized that Bengal had just seen 2 successive years of famines. And she realized that her purpose in life was a much larger calling. Education is what remembers after you forget everything that you learnt in school. And finally, especially for Indian students, what is the learning? A formal schooling. What should education be? The fact that no matter who you are, this is what I say to you people in class also, every single one of you is unique and is perfect the way you are. There is scope for improvement, but there is nothing wrong with you as such. If you're good for this exam, excellent. You think that you cannot clear this exam, doesn't matter. There must be a dozen other careers, even better, that are available for you. Unfortunately, most people are not content. They are bogged down by parental ambitions, by societal aspirations, by societal pressures. Here it is education that is needed to help a person acquire a sense of contentment. And this has taken the form of happiness curriculums, which has been introduced in many states of the country, government schools of many states, such as Delhi, such as UP, and so on. Why? So that from an early age, a child starts understanding, a student starts understanding that their worth is not attached only to their marks, only to numbers. At the end of the day, they must be content with who they are and what they are doing in life. Simple topic, not really difficult, but again, if you are able to give multiple perspectives, if you have appropriate content, the essay will take shape very easily. Now, this is where we conclude the discussion. One small advice I would give you. Out of these 8 topics, depending upon your level of preparation, if you are a student who is giving the prelims next year, your exam is about 9 months away. Try to write all 8 topics down in the form of essays in precisely 1200 words or close to 1200 words. Take as much time as you want. Time is not a concern. You take as much time, but try to write the best essay possible, where if an examiner was checking your essay, out of 125 marks, at least 62.5, which is 50%, at least 50% marks you would be able to get. When you write it, it will give you a reality check of where you currently stand and where you need to go. Depending upon the gap between the two, you will be able to understand how much more effort, how much more work you need to put in. Essay, unfortunately, is a neglected paper. It's worth, one essay actually is worth 125 marks, which is much more than the marks that are given to any subject in ethics, GS. If you look at ethics, I said, because the ethics paper is, I think, must have started by now. It's a neglected paper. A little bit of effort, a little bit of practice can yield significant results in your final marks. Alright, so if you have the time, depending on your preparation, please write. You'll understand very easily where you stand and what further work you want to do. Thank you very much.